Have you ever watched your favourite athlete put in yet another breathtaking performance and thought to yourself, how the did they do that? The lazy answers are that these people are geniuses or freaks of nature. Well, that's just plain wrong. Because guess what? Those elite athletes you admire, the ones who make the impossible seem routine, they've tapped into something that's accessible to every single one of us. It's not some magical ability given at birth, it's all about habits. For all of us, up to 40% of everything we do is habitual. And what separates the best from the rest is that they've crafted habits that make them highly effective in their performance domain. So let's take a look at 7 sporting icons and uncover the habits that allowed them to dominate their sports. First up, let's talk about Kobe Bryant. He was known for working out 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, which included working on his basketball skills, weight training, and track work, all to enhance his performance on the court. Many think of him as the hardest working athlete of all time in a physical sense, but he actually spent just as much time training the mind as he did the body. Once his body was exhausted, Kobe knew that he could still get mental reps in. So what he would do in the breaks between his 3 2-hour workout sessions is just go back to his hotel room, sit on his bed, and spend time visualizing. He would spend hours each day just running through all possibilities. Every shot pass and defensive play would be played through hundreds of times in his mind, so that he built up a mental script of how to execute on the court whenever those situations arose. The reason he seemed like this fearless beast on the court was simply because no situation was unfamiliar to him. Fear comes from the unknown, but Kobe knew that in working out his mind on a daily basis, he could eradicate that fear, because every situation he faced on the court was something he had faced 100 times before in his own head. Habit number 2 comes from Novak Djokovic. You see, many people today think of him as the undisputed GOAT in tennis, but if you look back to the early years of his career, no one would have predicted this. Despite winning his first Grand Slam aged 20 in 2008, Djokovic was known as a constant choker. People thought he purposely faked injuries and he could rarely last 5 sets. But at the turn of the decade, Djokovic firmly set his heart on becoming the best tennis player in the world, and finally breaking through the Federer and Nadal rivalry that dominated tennis for so long. Many people of course laughed at this, but Djokovic wouldn't budge on this ambition, because he showed the key habit of being positively delusional. Think about it, anyone who thinks they can become the best in the world at something has to at some point be delusional, because the chances are ridiculously slim. You've got more chance of winning the lottery. When you first have that thought that you can be the best in the world at something, it is outright delusional, because there's often no evidence or track record that you can actually achieve this. Djokovic for the first few years of his career was nothing particularly special. He was firmly in the pool of second-tier players behind Federer and Nadal, and did not stand out really. People thought he could definitely have a good career and pick up the odd Grand Slam here and there, but no one would have believed you if in 2010 you said he would win more Grand Slams than the 2 GOATs at the time. But to be positively delusional means you're willing to think way beyond your current limitations, which is essential if you want to become elite at something. We're not just saying good or great, we're talking elite, cream of the crop, and the best there is. And so positive delusions therefore have their main purpose in allowing you to strive for things that are previously unattainable. They are the ignition point to then help you carve out a pathway towards expertise, which is then obviously fueled by a range of other things. For Djokovic, this included completely changing his diet, workout routine, and also his engagement with mindfulness. But those other things wouldn't have emerged in the first place without Djokovic holding his positive delusion. Okay, so habit number 3 comes from Tiger Woods. This is a man who transcended his sport in so many ways. But despite being a first-class golfer, he's also been known to be a worst-class person. And the main reason for this is because deep down, he's inherently selfish. The cold, harsh, honest truth is that elite athletes often only get to where they get to because of putting themselves 100% first. And Tiger Woods has openly admitted this himself in saying, I think every great champion who has ever lived would say, yeah, they're selfish in certain aspects. That's how you got there. Throughout his career, he's cut countless friends, coaches, caddies, and ex-girlfriends from his life in the most brutal fashion. For example, apparently Tiger dumped his high school girlfriend of 3 years through a simple 4-sentence note that basically said that his parents didn't think that she fit into the plan of his career. Now, of course, this is an extreme example, and there are far better and less harsh ways of going about being selfish, but unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. If you think about it, anyone pursuing their dream of becoming the absolute best in their sport has to have their entire life revolve around their training and performances. They'll miss countless family birthdays and other gatherings because it doesn't fit with their schedule. Their parents spend years driving them around to training, meets, competitions, sacrificing all their free time just so their kid gets to pursue their dream. And then once that athlete gets to the top, the selfishness continues. Athletes can get traded or transferred without prior warning, and their entire family has to up sticks and move across the country or to another country because that's where they're playing now. There's no discussion. Everything is done for the sake of the athlete's career. And Tiger Woods is the best example of having that single-minded pursuit. He's been labelled as a very cold and unlikable person, but that's because he's been conditioned to be so focused on himself and his game. Unfortunately, in his case, this has gone to an extreme where it's bled into many different controversies in his personal life. And it's definitely not an excuse, but that's a risk that can come with unchecked selfishness that is allowed to build up over many decades. It might get you to the top, but it's also what can drag you down. So be careful in how you apply and navigate your selfishness. Habit 4 is one that can actually help with that. And it's one that the greatest marathon ever has deployed throughout his entire career. The great Eliud Kipchoge has earned millions of dollars, but still chooses to live an exceptionally humble life in rural Kenya. He's understood that it's imperative as an elite athlete to seek out the best environment. When training for marathons, Kipchoge resides with up to 30 other athletes in basic dormitory rooms, where his daily routine is getting up, running, eating, relaxing, and repeating. He, just like everyone else, will take turns doing the chores of cleaning, washing clothes, and tidying up the camp. Imagine that, the very best athlete in a sport cleaning the toilets that his peers use. And the reason he does this is to stay humble, because running is one of the most humbling sports. And to also just be in a simple routine environment where there are no distractions. We all know stories of athletes who, after a sniff of success or that big first paycheck, will go off the rails. The money, the status, the fame will get to their head and their performances suffer massively. They become a one-hit or one-season wonder because they start giving into the temptations that come with being an elite athlete. But Kipchoge understands that to become an absolute elite and stay there, you have to carve out and put yourself in the best environment possible. You have to go somewhere where all you can do is focus on your craft and where nothing will tempt you away from it. His family lives a short drive away from the camp, but when it's time for training, he says his goodbyes to them and will only see them on Sundays. And the funny thing is, even when he's not training for big races, Kipchoge's life remains as simple and routine as it does in the training camps. He lives on his own small farm where he keeps chickens, cows, and sheep, and his idea of fun on the weekend is driving into the local town to buy animal feed for these animals. And it's this simplicity that ensures Kipchoge can devote 100% of his physical and mental energy to breaking the countless running records that he has. Habit number 5 is another one that some people might find unexpected, and this one comes from Serena Williams. The 23-time Grand Slam winner is undeniably one of the greatest athletes ever, but despite her numerous titles, these are not actually what drove her throughout her entire career. Since she was a little girl practicing with her older sister Venus, there was always a focus on not losing. Serena absolutely hated it whenever her sister would defeat her, and so it became her goal to do everything in her power to avoid losses. She once told the Los Angeles Times that, "I hate losing more than I like winning, so that drives me to be the best I can be." And this is an incredibly common habit among the very best athletes. Naturally, all humans have biases towards loss aversion, which basically means we try our best to minimize negative outcomes as opposed to devoting more time and energy towards striving towards positive outcomes. And the very best athletes know that actually to get the most out of themselves, they have to tap more into this human drive. We often think that those who reach the top do so because they will do anything to win at all costs. And that is somewhat true, but often that is matched by and even overlapped by a greater desire to do anything to avoid losing at all costs. It's basic human motivation. We're either compelled to move towards desirable things or move away from undesirable things. And a lot of athletes forget that moving away from negative states can be a key fuel to tap into, particularly during the toughest moments. For a great champion like Serena Williams, she was almost always favourite to win the Grand Slam final she played in. And because of this expectation that she would win, this meant that she had to be motivated by not losing and failing to meet those expectations. And this hatred of losing is what allowed her to dominate women's tennis for 2 decades. And habit number 6 can be seen as a direct follow-on from a hatred of losing. And this one comes from 7-time Super Bowl winner Tom Brady. Throughout his entire career, Brady was an underdog because when you look at his raw physical attributes, he does not fit the mold of an elite quarterback. He was never that fast, his arm wasn't the strongest, and he wasn't amazing at throwing on the run. But the thing is, Brady didn't need other people to tell him this. And this is because he was his own harshest critic. Throughout his entire career, he knew he had a lot of weaknesses, and these were what attributed to him not always performing at the highest level. And he knew that on paper he was almost the exact opposite of what teams would want in their star quarterback. He openly admitted that he would always tell his teammates that nothing good happens when I've got the ball in my hands. So the faster he could get the ball out of his hands, then the better it was for the entire team performance. This was a philosophy he held right the way throughout his career. Even after a few Super Bowl championships, he never felt that he'd quite made it or deserved his place in conversations as the best quarterback of all time. For over 2 decades, he would spend hours after every game running through film watching every single play he made. Because he knew that even with successful passes that led to touchdowns, he could have maybe released the ball a split second faster. Or the technique of his release could have been a touch more measured. He refused to believe his own hype, and in being so critical of himself and performances, that's what led him to taking all kinds of measures to maximise his longevity and allow him to keep playing until his mid-40s. Brady had the maturity to know that the only way that you can fulfill your potential is to question and challenge yourself on a daily basis, by asking the question, how could I have done that better? And it is this attitude that also sits at the heart of habit number 7, and the man who best embodies this one is Cristiano Ronaldo. He entered the sport of football as an exciting talent that would sadly frustrate fans because of a lack of end product. But in the space of a few short years, he morphed into one of the most devastating goal scorers the sport had ever seen. The reason? It's because he refused to rely on talent. He knew that talent fosters complacency and laziness. It may get you your breakthrough, but it won't carry you far at the highest level, when it's only a matter of time before your opponents suss you out. So you need to remain adaptive and build on that talent through endless hard work. But the hard work itself can sometimes be misleading. It has to be a certain type of hard work, a type of hard work that Ronaldo mastered. To find out what this is and how you can apply it to your own training, then check out this next video here.